What does it take to be a genius? Is it defined by intellectual prowess and fortitude? Does it have everything to do with a high IQ? Is it a divine gift? Can we measure it in terms of academic excellence? Is it a vision beyond, or capacity to see beyond? Or does it have more to do with creativity and invention? I think it's all of these and more. And I've been reading Walter Isaacson's brilliant biography, Leonardo da Vinci, for a few weeks now, and I've finished it up, I've compiled my notes, and I've thought a lot about this question: what is a genius? What does it take to be a genius? And actually, this question guided my reading. And so today I want to take Da Vinci as a guide and model of genius, because he really was one of history's true and few geniuses, and we'll see why later on. I've always been captivated by this idea of genius, or of being a genius, like many wannabe geniuses. Even as a kid, I had this kind of desire to be a literary or a historical genius. A genius of the liberal arts, if you will. As a kid, my conception of what that would look like was knowing a lot and making new things, coming up with new ideas, creating new art, applying knowledge to do something new and better. Now, this book does not directly speak to this dream because, interestingly, Da Vinci was not overtly interested in literature or history, in classical knowledge, in that which had been passed down, or history for its own sake. He was much more interested in the new, and in thinking in new ways and doing new things. Yeah, he was a man of invention. And so, yes, he was a visual artist, he was a painter among many other things, which we'll get into, but he wasn't necessarily a writer, a poet, a literary person. I don't think he spent a ton of time reading because he was too busy thinking and writing and designing and drawing and all these things. So, as we talk about Leonardo da Vinci, we are not talking about a literary genius in the sense that I might want to be a literary genius as a writer. We're talking about something more broad. He was a scientific and an artistic genius, as we'll see. So, a few notes about the biography itself before I begin. This biography was extremely well researched and extremely well written, and that was very satisfying for me as a student of history to see how Isaacson handled the primary sources and the secondary sources, to read about how he traveled all over the world to different museums, different locations, to try to get his hands on the true Leonardo, if that makes sense. Overall, I do think this biography is quite accessible for the average reader. I don't think you necessarily need to be a well-read student of history to get a lot out of this biography. It does go really in depth in terms of Da Vinci's studies, his thoughts, and his inventions, so you need to actually be interested in those things more than just being interested in him as a person. So, for example, he did a lot of studies on light and optics, or the physics of water, and in a sense, his studies defined his life and illuminated his person. In a sense, they were him. So they are very important, and they are a proportionate and integral part of his biography. But if you're not interested in learning about the science of optics and light and how he did his paintings, then maybe this isn't a biography for you. But this biography is excellent if you are interested in art history or the history of science. It contains incredible visuals of his paintings, his sketches, his notebooks, his designs that really, really assist your reading and just show you more of Leonardo. And so, yeah, I cannot recommend this biography enough. And my experience reading this biography was more than satisfactory. So a few things about Leonardo da Vinci first. So he lived from 1452 to 1519 during the height of the Italian Renaissance. So he was a contemporary of Michelangelo, of Lorenzo de' Medici, of Cesare Borgia, of Francis I of France, of Niccolo Machiavelli, and all these really kind of prominent names in Renaissance history. He spent most of his life working in Florence, Milan, Rome, and then finally in France. He was self-taught, so he had no great formal education. He did not have a liberal arts education. He did not have a science education, whatever that would have looked like at this time. He lived to be almost 67 years old, and he spent almost all of those years just following his curiosity wherever it would lead him. He was a true Renaissance man in the sense that there was virtually no field that he didn't touch. There was nothing he couldn't do, nothing he wasn't interested in. So some of the great things he did: he painted some of the greatest Renaissance paintings. The most famous painting in the world, the Mona Lisa, is a work of Leonardo da Vinci. He designed musical instruments, weapons, military machines, bridges, functional cities, drainage systems. He studied optics and perspective. He studied water, geology, astrology. He was really into anatomy, so he dissected dozens of cadavers, sketched the human body, figured out how muscles and even the human heart worked based on his dissections. He was a stage technician. He designed elaborate pageants for different Renaissance rulers that they would hold in their courts. He wrote fables, riddles, and tales for these courts. He theorized and designed a flying machine, and honestly, this is not everything. He was just incredibly interested and incredibly gifted. In one of his notebooks, Leonardo had written, "Describe the tongue of a woodpecker," and Isaacson kind of came back to this quote over and over throughout the biography. It's just one of those really obscure and almost weird things that your average person would not hear about or be interested in. Describe the tongue of a woodpecker. It was a thought that Leonardo had at some point, and he wanted to learn about a woodpecker's tongue, and he never actually did because he never completed this thought. But whenever he would have a thought about an inquiry or a thing that he was curious about, he would just jot it down and try to come back to it later. He also had his own script or way of writing. So he was left-handed, so he wrote from right to left, and his script was mirrored, so flipped around. So his notebooks are really interesting to look at and tricky to read, obviously, but not completely indecipherable. It's not code, it's just mirror script from right to left, which was atypical in Italy at that time, obviously, and is still atypical in the West today. His brain moved from place to place to place, never resting long, always jumping around to the next thing. Despite his genius, Leonardo did have some flaws. As I just said, he was easily distracted. He had a hard time focusing on things because his interest and his curiosity would lead him all over the place at all times. He couldn't always focus, and so most of his projects are actually unfinished. Most of his designs were never actually actualized, made, and put into practice. So what we have are his visions and his theories. He also struggled with Latin, for example. He struggled to learn Latin. Languages and literature were not exactly his interest or his strong suits. He was a procrastinator, and I think Isaacson sees that as a really good thing. Personally, I can't procrastinate. That's just not the way I am. It stresses me out too much. So I kind of see that as a flaw. But maybe it's not. You can challenge me on that. He also was not very concerned with sharing his knowledge, publishing his work, contributing to progress. He really was just kind of in it to learn for himself and just to enjoy learning, enjoy the pleasure of knowing things. It wasn't like he was doing this for the sake of Western civilization necessarily, and for the benefit of, other scholars or other people around him. So, what does Leonardo da Vinci teach us about the nature of genius? Isaacson has some really quotable lines that start to get at the answer of this question. So one line says, "His ability to combine art and science made him history's most creative genius." So it's the combination of the two, the fact that he blurred disciplines, he blurred those lines. There was no art and there was no science to Leonardo. It was all connected as it is in reality. Another quote is, "The ability to make connections across disciplines, arts and science, humanities and technology, is key to innovation, imagination, and genius." Isaacson calls Leonardo a universal mind. He says that obsession is a component of genius. Talks a lot about curiosity and observation. He also says one mark of a great mind is the willingness to change it, which Leonardo was. A theory he had was proven false by fact or evidence. He would say, okay, my theory was wrong, and change his mind and follow the facts. Isaacson also sees some of Leonardo's genius as part of his disdain for handed-down wisdom that many people at the time just accepted, and his drive to do something new. So he seized knowledge for himself. He relied on his own mind and not the wisdom of others. And that's not to say that the wisdom of others doesn't have something to say to us and doesn't have value, but you also need to kind of think outside of that and think it through for yourself instead of just naively being told what to think. So I want to read one more quote, page 518. This is Isaacson saying, "What made Leonardo a genius? What set him apart from people who are merely extraordinarily smart was creativity, the ability to apply imagination to intellect. His facility for combining observation with fantasy allowed him, like other creative geniuses, to make unexpected leaps that related things seen to things unseen. Talent hits a target that no one else can hit, wrote the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. Genius hits a target no one else can see. Because they think different, creative masterminds are sometimes considered misfits. But in the words that Steve Jobs helped craft for an Apple advertisement, while some people may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And so, yeah, over and over again, it's been emphasized that it's not just intellect, it's not just IQ, it's not just a photographic memory, ability to retain and process information. It's creativity. It is seeing something beyond and chasing it and using your knowledge and what you have to do something new with it. Yeah, it's all a little bit abstract, but that's okay. I think there is still some level of great mystery as to what this means and what it's like to be a genius and what it's like to chase that unseen thing and to do something that's never been done before. I can't say that I'm that person. I would love to be a literary genius and to write something bold and new and beautiful, but who knows, I may never get there, and I'm certainly no Leonardo da Vinci with this capacity for both art and science as we distinguish them. Yeah, to be well-rounded and good at literally everything and not just have your specialty, I think is also key to this genius, right? Like, you can be the best historian out there, but if you know nothing about physics or chemistry, I feel like your understanding of the world is still really lacking, and like you are lacking perspective that maybe you don't need to do well in your own field, but you do need to be kind of a learned philosophical person who kind of understands reality. I don't know. What do you think? Please do let me know in the comments what you think of all this. So, learning from Leonardo, what can we learn from Leonardo? There's another quote from Isaacson. He was not graced with the type of brilliance that is completely unfathomable to us. Instead, he was self-taught and willed his way to genius. So even though we may never be able to match his talents, we can learn from him and try to be more like him. And then Isaacson actually identifies 20 short, snappy kind of lessons or takeaways, things that we can learn from Leonardo, apply them to our own lives, and get closer to possibly achieving genius. So I'm going to go through these quite quickly. Number 1 is be curious, relentlessly curious. 2, seek knowledge for its own sake, for the pure pleasure of knowing. Just be a learner. Love learning, love knowledge, love understanding, seek wisdom. Number 3, retain a childlike sense of wonder. And this is a classical principle that I think about all the time. Isaacson notes it's something that so many of us lose when we become adults. We just stop wondering. We think we know enough to get by in life, and we stop wondering what else is out there and what else there is to understand. Number 4, observe. Number 5, start with the details. That's the key to observing something carefully. Number 6, see things unseen. Not necessarily something you can just make yourself do. Something, I guess, to strive for or to try to do. Number 7, go down rabbit holes. Number 8, get distracted. This goes sort of against my whole idea of scholae being kind of undistracted time with attention given to a task. But then again, I guess you can be undistracted in your distractions. Anyways. Number 9, respect facts and let them change your mind. Let your mind be changed by them. Number 10, procrastinate. And Leonardo actually said to Duke Lodovico, men of lofty genius often accomplish the most when they work least, for their minds are occupied with their ideas and the perfection of their conceptions, to which they afterward give form. So, yeah, you could be procrastinating and it may look like you're not accomplishing anything. You're not writing that book. But you've been thinking about it. Your ideas are all there. And then at the last minute, it's actually time to sit down and just get them out. Yeah, I can see how genius definitely works that way. Number 11, let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Don't settle just for good. Like Amy March says, talent isn't genius. Don't settle for talent then. Aim for genius. Number 12, think visually. Number 13, avoid silos. This one confused me at first, but what Isaacson means is wander across all the disciplines, blur the distinctions between art and science. Don't just set your silo in the science field and stay there, you know? Number 14, let your reach exceed your grasp. Number 15, indulge fantasy. Some of Leonardo's creations, like his flying machine, were honestly pretty fantastical, and not necessarily realistic at all, especially for that time period. But they're still brilliant and super exciting and interesting to study because he didn't care. He wasn't worried about being too fantastical. He just thought of what he thought of and designed what he wanted to design. He wasn't concerned that, oh, it needs to be actually possible given the technologies and resources we have right now. He let his mind go farther than that. Number 16, create for yourself, not just for patrons. Leonardo created works for patrons, and other times he just flat out rejected them and refused because he wasn't inspired to do what they were asking him to do. And he held on to his own paintings and sometimes didn't even give the paintings that he painted for patrons to his patrons because they were his. They were his work, and he put his life and love into them. Number 17, collaborate. Leonardo da Vinci loved to talk to intellectual people, to creative people, to bounce ideas off others, to share his ideas with others. And again, not that he was really publishing them, but if he would bump into someone in a court somewhere who he enjoyed talking to, he made the most of that opportunity. Number 18, make lists. And number 19, take notes on paper. I love this. The amount of notebooks that we have from Da Vinci, full of his script, full of his sketches and just thoughts. Like, we know this man. We can know this man in large part because of these notebooks. So leave a paper trail like that for yourself to look back on. Maybe if you do achieve genius and you make a mark on the world and somebody wants to write your biography one day, they'll have these notebooks to look back on and to really gain insight into your mind and your heart. And number 20, and I love this one, be open to mystery. And this is the last line in the biography. Isaacson says, not everything needs sharp lines. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed reading this biography, and again, I highly recommend it to you. I've done a very brief synopsis and analysis of it, but I have not gone that much into detail. There's so much in here to learn and to glean and to enjoy, so I highly recommend that you get your hands on this biography and read about Leonardo da Vinci for yourself. Please do share your ideas about genius. Let me know if you agree or disagree with how I have understood it and how Isaacson has kind of described it. Let me know if you think it takes more or less than what I've gotten into. I feel like we all have this potential, maybe, but very few of us are living up to it. So yeah, thank you again so much for watching. Thank you for being here and supporting my channel once again. Please like this video, please comment, please subscribe, and I will see you again very soon in the next one.